Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Women of Water Get Real virtual summit, where we've been talking about where we're leaking women from the water career pipeline at all five stages, from kids in colleges all the way through to leadership and into reentry. And I'm very excited about our guest today because she has been a real powerhouse, definitely one to watch. When it comes to understanding women in engineering and getting real data, right? Because it's one thing to talk about empowering women, it's another thing to have some data to back it up. And she is also an engineer with 15 years in the corporate world before going out on her own with Engineers Rising. She's a heroine, I don't know, whatever we're supposed to call you. Stephanie, welcome, Stephanie Slocum, to the summit.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. See, I already can't talk. And I want to, as we're talking today, we're going to talk a lot about uh, how we help women stand out. And some of it is being okay with making a mistake like I just made. You are welcoming, and I'm like, oh, now I'm stuttering over my own words. And so I am so grateful to be here, Dr. Kat. And I'm excited for our
I'm
conversation
overwhelming,
today.
I know. Um, yeah, no, and absolutely, yeah, and one of the things I love about your work is that we share some of the experience of having come from a hardcore engineering background, but also getting into coaching and facilitation and understanding how all of that is done. And I think, before we get into the data, and folks, we have a really amazing resource for you. So please stay to the end for that. Stephanie's going to share something fantastic that is completely unique in the industry. But before we get to the data, we need to understand the context, and we need to understand how to get the information that we need in order to improve the situation for women, as well as the organizations, as well as society, as well as the communities that we serve. It is a great loss when we spend billions of dollars trying to get women and people of color into underrepresented groups into water, the environment, STEM, whatever, and then they leave. And people say, oh, let's just go inspire seventh grade girls and tell, women and blacks, whatever, to major in engineering college. And you too can have a good career without looking at everything else that's going on. So how do you, where do we start? We
Where do we start?
had
That's
a
a great
conversation, folks,
question.
before
Yeah.
we started playing. So we
Yeah.
can go on forever. So, yeah, started with trying to win trust, right? How do you start working with people if you want to find out what's really going on with an underserved community? How do you get that started?
Yeah. Great question. I want to give you a little bit more of my context before I answer that question. So first of all, depending on if you're watching this or if you're seeing this, I will say I am a white woman, and it took me many years to understand the privilege that goes with that, but I do now. So we'll share that. And I'm also the parent of three girls. So currently, I have two middle school students. I have one elementary school student, and so watching the kind of messages that are coming at them from different places, school, social media, all of those. It has been, an eye-opening experience for me about the messages. I mean, I know the messages I've gotten as a woman, but the messages our children are still getting are, maybe less forward-thinking than we would like to hope that they are. But then when we come to looking at like what is actually going on in the field, I feel like there's a subset of folks out there who are looking at this and saying, well, it's 2023. And so this problem is solved. We're getting a lot more women in. We have more women and minority students than ever graduating with college degrees. So that number, and I can't talk without sharing data. That's just, the engineer in me
It's
loves to share data. So that has
just
gone up 20% in the last 10 years for women specifically. And in that same time, the attrition rate of women has actually gotten smaller. So women are dropping out of the field at a it depends on the data, but it's like 7 to 10% more than their male counterparts are dropping out of the field in that same time. And so, as I like to say, the math literally doesn't work here in terms of the analogy I would use is if you had a bucket of water and there was a massive hole in your bucket, you would not solve the hole in the bucket problem by dumping more water in. You would fix the hole in the bucket and then you would dump more water in. And sure, there might be a couple more leaks because we all know we patch stuff up and there's a little bit more of a leak. But if you take those, that starts with who's graduating, who's staying in the field, and if you stretch that out 10, 20 more years, what we find is that 40% of women who have engineering degrees specifically, they drop out or they don't enter the field. And when I say don't enter, that's a minority of the 40%. But that means they, got their engineering degree and went to law school or something like that. And so understanding that, first of all, if you as an organization have experienced this leak that you get women and you can't keep them, that's part of it. And if you as an individual have had experiences where you had a less than awesome experience in an organization and either left the organization or left the field entirely, again, that is not in your head. You are not an anomaly. And it takes both sides to fix this problem, both on the individual and the organization level. I think until very recently, this has been predominantly put on the individual that, I still hear we can't find any qualified women in water or engineering or whatever. And I'm like, look at your network. If all in your network is not women and minorities, well, yeah, you're not going to find any. They're out there.
Yeah. Well, and there's so much we can unpack with all of everything you just said so far. I mean, I think back to my own experiences. Growing up in the 70s, my mom, as a professional woman, first woman medical doctor, class of, 7 women graduated in her class at Yale Medical School. And at a time when they were asking women, why should we give a spot to you when you're just going to quickly get married? And I heard all those stories growing up. I also grew up on "Free to Be You and Me," right? And all the songs about anything you can do, I can do better, and girls can be whatever they want, yada 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 yada. I believed that. I bought that hook, line, and sinker. I thought that that everything that we're talking about was in the past, and that now I could get the right degrees and I could get the right certifications and I could be one of the boys and I could get all the experience. Whatever I was told I needed to do, I did. I have 5 degrees in 5 fields, folks. You tell me to do something, I am freaking gonna do it. And eventually I got to a point when I was considered to become the first woman associate globally in the engineering division of this firm, which is what I was told after I was hired, that that was the real reason they hired. So I was a token from the beginning. I was a diversity hire from the beginning. And sure enough, it was so easy for a couple of the guys to just, you know, put my, just undercut my job, undercut my projects, come up with reasons. It wasn't about me being a woman. It was about, delays that they put into my into the reviews of things I've been working on for 2 years, and then going to the principals and saying, "Oh, look, this is going over budget." It's those kinds of things that come up, and so yeah, for anyone watching this, if you think something is going on, it may be going on, and it's not going to go away just generationally. I think a lot of people think, oh, once we get rid of these old, sexist, racist baby boomers, everything's going to be fine. But remember, a lot of the baby boomers were in the civil rights movement and civil rights movement. Some of them are more supportive than some of the Gordon Gecko types, right?
Absolutely, and I also think it's and there are so many things that I want to say just based on the story you shared. First of all, that story of trying to rise up into a leadership position and running into whatever you want to call it, a ceiling, a glass container, a wall that doesn't have a door, whatever you want to call it, that is not uncommon. I've done a lot of case study research of women who have moved into leadership positions. And an experience similar to what you described is in the top reasons why a rising leader left an organization to go somewhere else. As one of them said, she told me, she's like, the rules seem to change every time I was up for a promotion. She's like, I do all the things they would tell me to do, but they always changed and they never changed in my favor. They always changed in favor of the guy in her particular situation. And she was one, again, there were in a large organization, not a lot of female leaders at the top. And all the things that come with it. And I think that also belies the fact that, you know, it is much harder to thrive when you are an only. And we know that, if you are a woman of color, particularly if you're a Black woman, you are more likely to be an only. And what does that mean? You are usually or often the only woman in the room. And the only woman in the room, the only woman on your team. Sometimes you'll be the only one in your organization, depending on the organization's size. And having that support network, having
Mhm.
those mentors, having your own career board about, that can give you those insights, that can tell you you are not crazy when you are, talking about the things that happen to you that you have noticed don't happen to your male colleagues. Having that support system is a critical factor to being successful, even if you are like me. And what do I mean by that? So I am an introvert. I am now a proud introvert, but I was not always a proud introvert. I was the weird girl when I was younger that I'm like, I don't want to do girl drama, so I didn't have a lot of girlfriends. I was much happier behind my computer creating things, be it websites or in my spreadsheets. And I can happily, even today, kind of go in my hole behind my computer, not talk to anybody for a couple of days, and that's fine. Like I will come out at points, but I definitely I am a lone wolf type. And I've noticed in engineering specifically that there are a lot of women like me, and within water that they're like, yeah, I always found more comfort and more satisfaction in the technical stuff I was working on than in the people part. But here's the thing I wish someone had told me. And I think one of the keys to unlocking this in terms of, well, I'll tell you two things. One,
Mhm.
my work today, uh, my mission in life is to normalize women as leaders in the technical fields. And that includes you, even if you don't have an engineering or science degree, because we have a lot of women who are in these fields and who are passionate about them, don't have the engineering science degrees. I do not buy into the elitist BS that you may have experienced in your organizations here. And that could be a subject of a whole nother discussion. We're going to put that over there. But I think how we fix this, based on my experience, both working in the field with many, many women, with many organizations that care about gender equity, is we have more women in leadership positions, period. End of story. And so how does that happen? It starts with a word that a lot of engineers and science people dread, is really being able to sell your ideas and sell your stories. And I think to most technical people, sell is a four-letter word.
Mhm. Yeah. Yep. Yep. We were talking before you got out about how much we both have learned having created our own organizations, um, about the value of really understanding sales and marketing and at a deeper level, not just how to like glad hand people and all that kind of stuff, but how do you understand your market? How do you understand what drives people to make a decision? PhD in decision support system. I started doing the marketing. It's like, wait a minute, I've done this before, right?
Mhm.
This is how people make decisions, and especially when we're working in water and the environment. And like Stephanie said, whether you're an engineer, scientist, you know, um, finance, anything, whatever you're
Public
doing in
policy.
water
Yeah.
and law, what operators,
Mhm.
right? Field techs, right? You're working with people. You're working with your work when you're dealing with water. You're dealing with lives and livelihoods. This is something I learned when I started grad school. And I was like, oh, I have all these degrees and this, that, and the other thing. And I had a woman mentor, the only woman in the department at Colorado State, um, who said, nobody cares about your degrees. Nobody cares about your GRE scores, any of this other stuff. Like basically the whole state of Colorado had been divided by different professors. And if you want to work in the Arkansas Basin, you work with this one. If you want to work in the South Platte, you work with this one. That it's about those relationships. And it might look a little different if it's all women relationships between the guys, but still we're working on relationships. We're working and water, whether you're dealing with habitat, oceans, water supply, whatever, disasters, hurricanes, you're dealing with stuff in the public eye. So it's even more important to be able to understand people and to be able to explain, not just that you're good at the science and math or the legal analysis or the economic analysis or whatever, but that you can understand what matters to the person you're talking to. Communication is not about what you say, it's about what the other person hears. So how do they hear this? What are they listening for? What motivates them? And how do you incorporate that into your conversations? And that also includes selling yourself as a water leader, as someone who wants to be a water leader. How do you sell yourself to um, the people who are going to make the decision of whether they're going to work with you or not, man or woman, and especially as a woman, because there are certain assumptions being made, right?
Absolutely. And yeah, we can go into a lot of those assumptions, but I think what the trick here is that, we, no matter your gender, no matter where you are in the organization, you need to be able to influence both people you work with and people you don't work with. And that starts with meeting people where they are. And I think one of the biggest challenges, I wish it was the case that I was unaware of all the double standards we have at work. I wish I was unaware of the fact that women are much more likely, like 3 times more likely, to be interrupted in a meeting. And if you don't believe me, I'll throw out the challenge.
I'm sorry,
Next,
I was interrupting. Go ahead.
next mixed gender meeting you are in, start writing down every time a woman talks and gets interrupted. You will be appalled at how often that happens relative to how often the men get interrupted. There is one exception to this. The women leaders who have learned to interrupt back. This is what I have learned to do, and why sometimes in conversations now, I am the interrupter because I developed that admittedly bad habit, but it's what I had to do to be heard. And
Yeah.
so it's all about, like, how do you influence the people around you? And it's meeting them where they are. And so I'll give you an example of this, because this is something I run into all the time about holding these. On one hand, we know, statistically speaking, all the things about, there's not a lot of women in water. There's not a lot of women engineers. There's not a lot of women scientists. But if I go into a situation with, let's say, a male manager, and I look at this situation, and every time I get criticism, every time I get feedback I don't like, my instantaneous thought is, well, he's sexist and he just doesn't like women. That
Mm.
doesn't, that just adds stress to me, and it doesn't serve me in my career. If I say instead that, either there may be some threads to pull there that are useful, or this person doesn't really get it and I need to better communicate my ideas, that is a thought of a future leader. And so I think it can be challenging to hold both of those. Um, but it's the starting with, how do we meet people where they are? How do we communicate those things? And how do we kind of have the discipline in our own minds to have those conversations? And then if we flip this around to the organizational side, I think organizations need to play a much bigger part here, because fundamentally, if a manager is giving a young woman feedback and is delivering it ineffectively, and that's one of the things you most need to advance through an organization, where is the organization's responsibility for delivering training to that manager, for giving the manager feedback on here's how you do this? And so I really do think has to be a two-pronged approach here with,
Right.
you know, the relationships you have with your people, while recognizing that there isn't only one way to do things. And that's where I think we get into issues with feminine leadership styles and masculine leadership styles, because we see in a lot of organizations that feminine leadership styles are not given the respect they deserve when they are coming from women. Although with men, we're like, oh, you're showing empathy and compassion. That makes you a great leader. And we take it for granted in women. And so, shifting those norms of what is a leader? What does a great leader look like? Both within organizations and individually, is another piece of this, to make sure that the qualified women are advancing through the organization instead of dropping out and starting their own firms, or
Yeah.
dropping out and going to other places.
Yes, and we were talking about that during the summit as well as what are the challenges when women do hang their own shingle, and I'm going to save that for another
Yeah, go check
conversation.
those
But
out too.
within the organization, you know, part of leadership is also adapting to circumstance.
Mhm.
There's some people who are recognizing the under mentorship, under guidance given to the younger generation, especially millennials. And I can't remember where you fall on the spectrum as far as, I'm an early Gen Xer. I think you might still be Gen X or late millennial, or whatever. But there was like this huge influx, right, of of these younger people, in millennial generation. Part of it is that a lot of the larger organizations, I was in that Title IX generation, the affirmative action generation, the first generation to really see, a fair number of women and people of color who were able to access these programs. And so we came and we were able to get kind of so far. Some of them made it all the way. Usually, if they had not just a mentor or sponsor, but really a champion and a protector in some cases.
Mhm.
You know, I think a lot of women who made it to the top don't quite realize the power of having a certain logo on your business card, or having a father or some husband who was in the industry, and they're like, oh well, that never happened to me. Well, yeah, nobody's going to mess with you because of who your father was. But it doesn't, that's another level of privilege that we see a lot of women who got into it because they had a family member in the industry, and how does that make a difference, right?
Right.
But then you have these younger folks that are like, we're accepting everybody, and we're going to make sure that everyone's has the right pronouns, and we're going to have make sure that everyone does anything our way, and they're intimidating the crap out of the older, mainly older white guys who already can't understand them. The middle part, a lot of the people who would have been good intermediaries, a lot of them, and that's one of the reasons why we've got to look at how to bring people back, because you have, for those who do step out to raise their kids, or take care of an aging parent, or take care of their own health, or leave a toxic, workplace situation, maybe an ideal person to bring back in and help to lead some of the, because a lot of millennials they're hitting 40 now, and some of them are realizing that they don't have some of the skills that they need to go up to the next level. They don't feel comfortable facing clients across the table who are a good 20, 30 years older than them, right? And they also don't feel comfortable going to their bosses who might be significantly older than them, and asking them for their advice. There is, like you said, there is that communication disconnect. And so when we talk about how can we get women into the pipeline, that is something that, engineers have this vision of like this very traditional career path. 20s, you're in college, you're in grad school, you do some low level work kind of stuff, run the data, go collect the field data or whatever. Then 30s, you're in your journeyman years. It's just like a guild structure, right? Apprentice, journeyman, right? And then you walk the tables to become a master, to become a principal, to become an associate, to become head of a division, whatever, and there's not a lot of tolerance for anyone who steps outside of that. Oh, wait, you started your own business? Well, we can't hire you. You're an entrepreneur. You're not going to want to work for a large organization.
Right. Yeah. And so there are so many things that I have data on that's related to what you just shared. Let me talk about one, and then I want to talk about what you just said, because I think this is really, really important for any industry to understand that is in what I would call a more traditional engineering science related field. So water, construction, manufacturing, oil and gas. You are not just competing. Yeah, let's start there, because you're not just competing with people in your own industry for talent. You are competing with the water software companies who can pay 3 times as much and give your people flexible schedules. I am seeing a mass exodus in people doing career pivots right now and this has been really picking up speed in the last 2 or 3 years, saying, I'm in this traditional industry that, you would think after the pandemic, we could work from home some of the time. They're forcing us to come back to work, and people are quitting. And so, like, if you are an organization, you're like, we can't find people. I would like to call you on that right now. That can you not find people, or can you not find people who are willing to fit into the tiny little box that you're trying to put them in? Can you not find people, or are you not willing to pay them enough for what you're doing? And so, like, there is certainly that piece of it, and really, like, the more global our economy becomes, the more I think some of the traditional mindsets behind management and leadership are going to find that they are struggling to retain anybody, because there are other options that were not available to your smart technical people 10 or 20 years ago. And then, back to the comment you had made earlier about many of the women that get into these fields had someone that they, in their family that they knew. I'm finding that, and I'm finding this via a lot of case study interviews, a lot of talking to people. So that was very true for someone, we'll say, my age and older. And so you were asking me where I was in the thread. So I consider myself a straddler. I was born in the last month of 1979, and if you Google where's the age difference, no one knows where that spot is. Like, sometimes I'm in one, sometimes I'm the other. So the best way I
So
can
then
describe this,
Zennials with an
yeah.
X, right? Zennial with an X.
So the best way I can describe this is I had a analog childhood and a digital adulthood. Like, the internet really became a thing when I was in high school, like right at the end. So like the 99.com skyrocket, that was right around the time I was starting college. And it's been interesting because I've had a lot of conversations with people in that group. There's only a couple of years. It's like 1978 to 1982. And we're like, wow, we can bridge the gap between the different generations in a way that other people can't, because we've seen both sides and we listen to both sides and we get it on both sides.
Yes, and they can
Yeah,
translate, and they can be intermediaries, and if one of those people happens to get pregnant and happens to want to spend some time with their kid, how valuable is it to bring them back in? Those skill sets don't go away. You don't have to say, oh, we need brand shiny new graduates just coming out of school.
right. But I think anyone that's listening today, that wasn't a little anecdote about, what I can do better than other people. But what I find for especially the women is, um, so when I've mentored guys, often their story of coming into leadership is something to the effect of, I just, did my technical thing, someone tapped me on the shoulder, I went up the path. With the women I have interviewed, and I've done a lot of case study interviews, I'll foreshadow the free thing I'm going to share is actually a exclusive report documenting all the different things we found in these case study interviews in a very digestible, data driven way. But when I talk to the women that are in leadership positions now about like what was your path to leadership, a couple of things emerged. One of them was this idea of really knowing yourself and knowing your strengths and aligning them with your roles. So, my comment about how I personally, because of circumstances and how I grew up and things I've worked on, I can communicate between different generations and uh, different people. Like I try to get into people's heads in terms of talking to them and building rapport with them, even if I completely disagree with what they believe politically or what they're showing up on social media. I took that gift for granted for many, many years until I realized when I was in a very conflict driven conversation in a group that I'm like, oh my goodness, I have the ability to separate the idea from the person. And
Mhm.
that allowed me to be able to bridge that gap in that situation. Many of the women I coach, I find that no one has ever given them feedback about what their strengths are. And again, this is partially, individual reflection can get you so far here. Organization feedback is the other thing in terms of organizations developing people so that they can understand what their strengths are. And oh, by the way, organizations benefit hugely from a financial perspective when they do that, because then you have people who want to stay because they wake up every morning and say, hey, I'm in my genius zone. I get to use my unique skills, gifts, and talents to make a difference in the water world. And so understanding what your strengths are and then building the support on top of that. 89% of the women that I've interviewed in my case studies told me that it was a mentorship moment. And that was always a one on one conversation. Not, I have group mentorship is awesome. And we've seen a lot of rise of that, particularly for the younger generations. But when we're talking about moving into leadership roles, having that one-on-one conversation with a mentor or a sponsor, even if it's not a formal mentor relationship, that is the thing that typically catapults someone into leadership and several of those conversations over time. And so I think for anyone, but particularly if you are in your career and at a place where you're like, I do not have mentors at work, I do not have the support I need, that is going to be one of the first places to go. And if you're an organization and you have not intentionally crafted ways for your young people to get mentors, and this is really important for minorities and women, and a very close second, really important for everyone else. Um, people don't leave when they have best friends at work. People don't leave when they have the support system they need. And so on both sides, again, tackling this on both sides, this is one of the like I can look at someone and have a conversation with them and say, what's your support system looking like at work? And predict if they're going to leave or not. It is that much of a correlation.
Yeah, and it is a huge expense for companies when their people leave. I can't even believe how much organizations are spending now on hiring these these sicking the dog on you outside recruiters who don't know anything about their company, who just go looking through LinkedIn hoping that they get a hint. Yeah, and then you get in to talk to someone at the company and the talent acquisition person who actually works for the company. And then you go through maybe a panel discussion of other people besides the person you would actually work with and have them sort of do some analysis. And you get to talk to the hiring manager, right? And it's like, there's so it's not like what it used to be, where networking could actually lead to someone saying, I need someone just like you. Go ahead and put in your application. I'm going to call HR and say, can you kick up that application? They put so many different layers, and again, especially water and the environment. A lot of it is public sector or nonprofits that are getting public grants, or government contractors. Right? It takes large organizations to do large projects. And by the way, I want to mention that earlier, that there is a time for a masculine leadership style. When you're facing a hurricane, when you're dealing with aging infrastructure, when you're trying to build, multi-million dollar projects, there is a time for people to show up and be there at work and do the job that needs to get done. And it can't always be about relationships and how someone's feeling, and to say, look, you need to separate that. That's part of what you were saying about being able to separate the facts from the emotions and everything. It's like, when is it about me? And this is where coaching can be really valuable, when you have someone who actually knows something about coaching. Which coaching is a word that people throw around. Oh, I don't know what I want to do now. Oh, I'll become a coach, right? There's no licensing. I mean, there's some licensing, a few pockets here and there, but there's really not a profession the way there is in engineering and other spaces. So you have a lot of people who call themselves coaches who don't know what they're doing, and it can take time to really develop your skills as a coach, just like it takes time to develop your skills as an engineer. And to understand that, some of it is the directive, I'm going to help you through a task. Kind of like, if you're coaching a sports team. I coached rugby, coached a national champion team, right? Some of it is just teaching the skills, right? But some of it is also helping them develop as human beings, and recognize that coaches also have to do their own work and go through that own self-actualization stage. And the best managers, the best executives, the best leaders are the ones who've taken the time to do their own journey. And I'm hoping that there are people watching this, that this is going to be an all-women summit, but I'm hoping that the people watching include a lot of the men who have become very aware of how important this is, and recognize that you're going to find in the summit actual hard data, actual facts, and information that you can put into use right away.
Yeah. So can I share one of those things that I think would really resonate with? So
Please.
first, actually, let me share two things, and the second will be the one that I think will really resonate with, you know, any any men or LGBTQ folks who are like, I'm here to support women. I work with them. I manage them. I want to know what I can do. So first of all, welcome, welcome that you're here. We are happy you are here. This is, we appreciate that you had the courage to step into this space. The analogy I use is like, how many men of their own free will would step into a OBGYN's office? Think about how uncomfortable that would make many of us, and you are willingly doing this. So that is awesome. One of the things I found in my case study research, because I was like, okay, do women mentors and sponsors make a difference to, and again, I'm looking at the emerging leaders and people who are in leadership positions, in that, they have already been promoted to at least a manager. Some of them are CEOs of large government organizations, large private practice organizations. And I wanted to know, okay, like what was their paths? What are the patterns I could find between them? And I'm like, okay, does a woman mentor really make a difference? And what
Mhm.
you may be interested to learn is not so much. And I think, we've seen a we know we need mentors. Often when there is like a senior woman somewhere, all of a sudden she is asked to mentor way more people than she can possibly handle, because she is the senior woman, and all the other women are, look at her and say, oh, she's like me, she can mentor me. But the reality of what is actually happening is, it's more about values alignment, in that, do you kind of share my worldview? Are
Mhm.
you kind of supportive of the kinds of things I'm interested in doing? Are you supportive of me in general? So if you are here, like, and you are a man or a woman or anyone in a senior position for that matter, the best thing you can do to help bring more women into your organization, to retain women, is to, you personally, mentor or sponsor a younger woman in your organization. And so, that, even if you can only give 15 minutes a week to a different woman for a conversation, that
Mhm.
conversation will be remembered so long after the fact. And it's when we talk about mentorship versus sponsorship, sponsorship is much more about who is supporting you and rooting for you and talking about you behind closed doors when you aren't there. That's the other piece of this puzzle. And that, when you have rising stars who are women, who are minorities, lifting them up in those conversations and saying, hey, we have this stretch project. I want to give so and so a chance. Hey, we have this promotion opportunity. Let's make sure that who we're looking at for promotions, we have diversity here. Like we have gender diversity, we have racial diversity, we have ethnic diversity. And then I can take that a step further, because one of the other things I found in my research is that clear, written down promotion paths is directly correlated with how much diversity is in your leadership. When it is a mystery as to how you get promoted, you tend to promote, consciously or unconsciously, people that remind you of you when you were younger. Since most of the leaders in our organizations are white men, and I'm married to a white man who is also an engineer. So yes, we have very exciting engineering dinner table conversations. I get it. But even me, like if I'm looking at who I wanted to promote and I don't have this criteria written down, I'm going to promote a woman that reminds me of me. So it's not just you. Everyone does this. It's a type of bias that we all have. And so writing that stuff down, making it clear to the people you manage, how do you get promoted? What criteria, like what are the skill sets you have to develop? Communication, technical, all of that stuff is a very practical way to make things more equitable and fair. And so, yeah, two practical things: mentor women,
Yeah.
write down those promotion
In
criteria.
some cases, they almost take that too far, because then you get these ridiculous job announcements, these position ads. So I've been applying for positions for ages, and and I'm like trying to come up with these tailored things that show that I have all the strengths that they want and have all the experience, and yada 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 yada, while keeping it short. Got to keep it short. um that they may not even look at anyway. And then you call and talk to the talent acquisition manager. It's like, well, actually, the hiring manager only wants three things. It's like, why are we going through all these hoops to do all these other things? And before I get, let you tell you, there was a point you made about mentoring someone younger. And what we need to recognize is we have 5 generations in the workforce, right?
Mhm.
And people have different career paths. And increasingly, that's also including men leaving work to take care of their kids, or leaving work to take care of an aging parent, or their own personal health. I had a few years of cancer. I probably, had I been working, because I caught it early, and this pisses me off, had I been working and had access to decent medical care and good medical coverage as an employee, I would have been able to get diagnosed right away, get the surgery right away, gotten the radiation while I was still working, and it probably wouldn't have been much of an interruption. A couple weeks after the surgery, that's it. But because I was out on my own as an entrepreneur, and then having to go through all these hoops with a lower quality insurance, it took forever to get approvals to see someone else, and they were all, oh, you're just trying to get attention or whatever. It's just, there's a bias. It changes things. The point is that whatever the personal life path is, everybody needs a mentor. I need a mentor. I'm turning 55 this summer. I just had a call with an interview with an amazing woman, Yvonne Gamble, who, don't miss her interviews. She's coaching me in the middle of the interview, right? And I try to be coachable, but we need to also teach people how to coach up, because what's happened is, with people stepping out of their careers, those who are continuing to work are sometimes getting promoted, where if we only teach them to hire someone younger than you instead of the best person for the job, it's very easy for someone to say, oh, well, yeah, they've got more years experience than me. They have more degrees than I have. They're older than me. I'm not comfortable with them, or I'm intimidated by them. How would that play if somebody said, well, I'm not comfortable hiring Black people. I'm intimidated by Hispanic people. You wouldn't say that, but people openly talk about that with someone who's older. So, um, if you've got something to share, be willing to mentor someone who is older than you. That's leadership too, is being able to work with people of all ages.
Right. And I would even take that one step further, because what you're alluding to is the difference between role-based hiring and strengths-based hiring. So I think that's another piece of it in terms of a really easy example of this is I was talking to a woman that works for a very large transportation company that I'm not going to say the name. It is under a government agency. And she was saying that she was having difficulty finding diverse people with the specific engineering degree she was looking for. And so what she did was they recrafted their job advertisements focused on the skill sets of the person they needed. They got a whole lot more applications. A lot of the people that came in, they didn't have an engineering degree, but they had physics degrees and math degrees and other credentials. And so, even when you're managing up or down or all around, like no matter how much experience I personally get, there are some things I'm going to be good at, and there are some things I'm not going to be good at. And that internal reflection of, even though I'm a technical expert in this, like I don't have to be great at every non-technical communication skill under the sun. I'm a great writer, I'm a great strategist, I'm not a people person. And I can still go and build relationships. But like if you put me in like a straight up sales role in an organization, for example, I'd probably not do so hot. But looking at yourself and then looking at like if you're an organization hiring, like who has the skills you need? As a general rule, I find that women are way over credentialed for the role they're in. They have a PhD and there's a guy in the role that has a bachelor's degree. Like now some of it is
Yes,
if you love to
because you
learn,
got a PhD.
yeah. If you love to learn, great. I
Yes.
love to learn too. Okay.
Yeah.
But I also find that sometimes we look at all the credentials that show up on all the job stuff and we're like, oh, I need to go get another credential before I apply for the role. And we know that men don't tend to do that. The statistic there is women want 80 to 90% of what's in that job description before they apply. Men will go at 50%. And so thinking through that for yourself in terms of, okay, like what are my skills individually and looking for roles that match those. And then from the organizational side, just because like historically we can come up with all sorts of people who had no engineering science degrees who are household names. I cannot tell you the number of times, for example, that someone's like, oh, Steve Jobs was an engineer. No, go look at his background. He has no no degrees, no classes in engineering or science and any of the technology people. Yet, like I cannot tell you the number of times someone has told that. Like we know historically, skills and credentials are not the same thing. So why are we hiring that way?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. 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 Look at the time. Figure, oh my God, do I want to get into another rabbit hole? Because I tell you, it's something I can talk forever. And by the way, I just want to say Stephanie is an amazing people person. She's not, belle of the ball, life of the party animal. That's different types of people skills. And one of the things that I have found that she truly excels at, I've really been blessed to get to know her because she has, was it once a month?
Hmm.
You do
Yeah.
a free folks. You can be part of this incredible mastermind session that she'll tell us a little bit about what you do
Okay.
there
Yeah,
because
I'll tell you about
you do
that.
a great job.
Yeah. So, um, I run a once a month, and we just started doing this in 2023. And so, once a month, it's a STEM women's structured networking event. So, what does that mean? Quick backstory here. So, the very first in person networking event I went to back when you could really only do in person networking, As my introverted self, like I went into the bathroom and I like made a deal with myself because I'm thrown into this room with all these people that I do not know. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to introduce myself to three people I don't know. And if at that point I want to leave, then I will. And so that was the deal. And I did go and do it. And I did manage to, like, I think I got up to 10. I had, like I said, I had to make a deal with myself. But at that time, I really, really wish there was a place that women, particularly if you were like the only one at work, could go and build connections and relationships with each other and not do the small talk. Like, I don't want to talk about the weather. I want to talk about like things that matter and big ideas and go to an event and come back inspired. And so what I did was I created this event and it's free that you come to, and we do small group breakouts with a question. And so, for example, January, we were talking about goals. Like, what is your goal? And this month we were talking about, okay, like how are we limiting ourselves? And we talk about things, and the feedback I get over and over again is that people leave inspired. They leave like, okay, I got this. They leave with the new connections. And it's the networking event for people that don't like networking, is the best way I can describe it. And, Dr. Kat, to your point, I'm never going to be the person you can throw me into a room and I'll be comfortable there. But I love asking questions and I love hearing people's stories. And so part of owning my own strengths and part of any listener owning theirs is looking at what do I like? Where do I excel? And how can I do more of that? And so I think that's the reason I'm here today, because I love talking to you and hearing your story. And I invite any of the listeners who are out there to connect with me, come to one of these networking events, and because I want to hear your story too.
Awesome, awesome, and for everyone watching today, whether you're watching us on the date that we're releasing, and by the way, in case you haven't figured out, we're pre-recording all of these because it is easier on schedules, and it can be hard, even just knowing that you're on live. By the way, did I tell you that I live stream this? There's like thousands of people watching. No, I'm just kidding.
That's
It's
fine.
just you and me. Who would like completely freak out if they thought it was being streamed? No, we're just having a conversation, just two of us. We do have you folks watching us after the fact, but go ahead and type in the chat. There is a page here that this video is playing in. That is Stephanie's page. So any of the chat there, Stephanie can come in at any time. And so any stories you want to share, any questions about the stuff that we talked about, go ahead and type in the chat. For those of you who want to join us in the VIP, get all access, lifetime access to all the views, as well as joining our water dialogues. And I'm just starting to talk about this. We're planning to have this water dialogues group, a safe space online where people can get together and talk about things that matter. Right. Whether it's about women, whether it's about aging, whether it's about entrepreneurship, whether it's about government contracting and all the struggles there, working with an agency, what that's like, something that there aren't a lot of safe spaces often in the workplace. And one of the things that really draws people to water and keeps them in water is you have these water people that, you kind of, your people. And to have a place to be with your people, know that there's going to be no trolls. There's not going to be nobody doing rants and then bullying people or anything. It's going to be moderated and facilitated and everything like that. And there's so many ways that we can do that virtually. And I hope that we at Water Citizen can do more of that. So I want to wrap up with Stephanie. Tell us about this amazing guide that you're going to give us. You did tremendous work on this.
Yes, I did. So I did more than 100 case study interviews of women leaders within STEM organizations. And I also interviewed a fair number of male allies as well, as to, what was your leadership path? What are the organizations you are in doing to support you? How do we fix this problem of this gigantic leaky bucket we have with women leading STEM? Oh, and by the way, some of these women I was talking to, if you think, statistical anomalies, I was talking to one woman who's the president of her small organization. She has 40% women engineers. Talk about demolishing the stereotypes around what you could do in your organization. And
That is
so,
so
yeah,
common. Every time a woman gets to be head of a utility, suddenly she's got an all-woman team. It's very common. Go ahead.
yeah. And so, anyways, as we've been talking, if you've noticed, I have been sharing both from the individual side of what you can do and from the organizational side, because I really do think that the way we get more women into leadership is to tackle it from both sides. This report that I've put together tackles it from both sides, both the individual, if you are an individual woman wondering, I want to be in a leadership role, what are the things I need to do? We outline the 6 most common things from the existing women leaders. This is not conjecture. This is not, yeah, this sounds good. No, this is actually from research that were the catalyzing moments that led to that leadership role. We have gone and outlined for organizations what are organizations doing who are not just retaining, but advancing their women into leadership positions. From the women themselves, we wanted to know, what do your organizations do practically to support women? And we could do a whole nother conversation on, employee resource groups and best practices and things there. That is in there as well. And so I really encourage you. This is a exclusive report. It took us months and months and months to do. It took me personally about 3 months to do the interviews, and then another 4 months to unravel the data, write the 30-page report. There's a lot of really good data and a lot of really practical things that you can take from that. And so I invite you to go check it out, completely free. And I wasn't necessarily planning on sharing to invite people to the networking event, but I will do that. I will do that as well. All you have to do for that one is come to my website, and maybe we can drop a second link in here, because again, completely free and open. And we run networking events. We also have a roundtable coming up, date to be determined, where we are inviting organizational leaders to come have a conversation about how we do better on retaining women in water and STEM.
Beautiful. I highly recommend, folks. We will definitely make sure that page includes both the free download and how you can sign up for one of these monthly sessions. And I tell you, the caliber of work that Stephanie's produced. We've been teaching water leaders since COVID started, when suddenly people couldn't go to conferences. I started doing research, created the virtual water education lab, teaching water leaders to create their own programs on everything from duck habitat to climate smart gardens to water acid management to groundwater well made. I mean, it was the full gamut. But how do you get to know people? How to conduct a research interview properly, which is different from the kind of interview you've seen here, where we kind of had a good conversation, and it hopefully included you in the chat. But yeah, tremendous work, and thank you so much, Stephanie, for being here. Thank you so much for all the work that you were doing on behalf of me and all the other women in STEM that you have helped, and keep up the good work. And folks, I hope you guys get a chance to learn from Stephanie and experience her directly, and come to all of our sessions coming up for the Women of Water Get Real Virtual Summit. Thanks for getting real with us. We'll see you again soon. Thanks so much for joining us for this extraordinary conversation, one of 45 extraordinary conversations we had as part of the Women of Water Get Real Virtual Summit, where we explored where and why women are leaking from the water career pipeline, how we can stop those leaks, and even bring women back to water. I hope that you will enjoy all of these amazing interviews. If you don't have a chance to watch all of them during the summit, you have the opportunity to join us with a power pack and get lifetime access to all the videos, as well as an opportunity to join us for 30 days in a brand new community where we will dig even deeper in live facilitated conversations about some of the issues that are facing Women in Water. Look forward to seeing you there. Please join us at watercitizen.org/women, watercitizen.org/women for more information. See you again soon.